Hey Detroit, this is Councilmember Janee Ayers, your at-large councilperson for the city of Detroit. And today we are hosting our summer series, Coffee and Conversation, and I get to do it with Senator Gary Peters. And so not only is it important for you all to know what your municipally elected officials are doing, but we have to also know what our federally elected officials are doing. And so I'm excited about what's going to happen today. We've got folks showing up already. We're here in District 5, right on Holden Street, and we are having our event at ArtBlock, which is Henry Ford Health Center building. And so I hope you all stay tuned, understand what's happening. And again, if you ever have any issues, call our office at 313-224-4248.
Morning, everybody. I want to just take 30 seconds to welcome you here to ArtBlock. My name is Megan Dunn. I'm the Director of Community Outreach and Partnerships for Henry Ford Health System. I would like to thank our esteemed elected officials, Council Member Janee Ayers and U.S. Senator Gary Peters. Thank you for coming to our neighborhood. Thank you for showing us some love. This is a wonderful building and a partnership that Henry Ford Health System has with our neighborhood community groups, including the 15th Street Block Club, and our president is here for that, Winifred Kidd. Also with the Dresner Foundation. So this was an old liquor store. You can see the original title of the store, Lincoln Express, here on the floor, that Henry Ford Health System, sorry, that's my little guy making some noise there, that we purchased this store so we could make it a community art space for community members, for anyone in the Detroit community or surrounding communities to use as a community art space. We have yoga lessons here, free of charge for community members. We have art classes here. We have any sort of community programming here right in the heart of this very special and precious neighborhood. So we just want to thank you for being here today. Thank you for opening your eyes here to this neighborhood and specifically to this space. We'll be giving these out at the end of the meeting, and these are just flyers for ArtBlock that share some information about the building and how to reserve the space. And also, if you have any questions or if you want to hear updates about ArtBlock, we have a guest book that's right in the entry, and we'd love for you to sign it so you can learn more and share more about this very precious space. Thank you again for being here, and we look forward to a really great coffee hour. I'm also a Detroit resident. My mom's a Detroit resident, and my little 9-month-old is also a non-voting Detroit resident, but one day will be, and we're thankful to have you here, and we can't wait to hear the conversation. Thank you.
All right, so I guess I have to get used to using the microphone because, as you all can tell earlier, I don't use a microphone. I got a loud mouth. So I'll just give you guys just kind of the overview of how, if you've never been to a coffee hour with me before, how things go. I don't like anything stuffy. I don't like anything that's just rules on top of rules. We don't do that. This is your opportunity to have your elected officials in front of you. Because at the end of the day, we're just people, just like you. We just have a job where everybody's looking at us and holding us to a higher regard than everyone else. But I'm the person, Gary's a person, that's that. So we talk openly. We do respect each other because I want to make sure that that is in place. I'm going to respect you, and I want you to respect me, and I want us to respect the space and our time. We're going to try to be as efficient as possible because Senator Peters does have another meeting and a couple other things that he's going to do after this. So we'll be as concise and complete as possible. If in fact we don't get to your question, just know that my team and Senator Peters' team will also be here after he may have to leave or I may have to leave to make sure that we address that. But the reason we had you all sign in and give your name and your number is so that once we get your question or your concern, we can follow up with you, because that's one thing that I'm big on. I feel like most people don't trust government because when you get there and you get through all the bureaucracy, nobody's even calling you back. Nobody's saying anything. It's just silence. So I feel like, for my office at least, what we try to do is engage you. We'll call you, hey, we don't have the answer yet, but we'll get back to you when we have the answer, and we engage you along the way so that you just don't feel like you were just something passing in the wind. And so that's just what I try to do, because that's what I want somebody to do for me. And that's just kind of how I do my thing, but that's me. So I'm going to pass this over to Gary, and I'm sorry, I call him Gary because he's a friend. And let me say this, because I have not had a chance to say this to him. I lost my father in May, and Gary not only did he call, not only did he text, not only did he leave a voice message, I got back to my office and I had a written note from him to tell me as a friend how much he was hurt by my sadness and how much he would be there for me. And I haven't had a chance to see you to thank you, but I want to thank you because that means a lot. So it's saying that, and I shared that with you guys, and I knew I was gonna cry. But I share that because I want you to understand that when you actually have people that care about other people in office, that's important. And he doesn't care about me because, thank you, because I'm Councilmember Ayers. That's nothing. Gary knew me before I was this. He's just a regular guy. And so I want you to understand the type of person that we have sitting here next to me and in this room with you. So, all right,
well, thank you, Janee. Thank you for being a great friend and all that you do for the city. We appreciate you and appreciate you putting together this regular event on a regular basis, just hanging out and talking to folks and having an opportunity to talk about issues that are important to all of us. And I appreciate your kind invitation to join you with your friends here and supporters and residents of the city of Detroit. And God bless you for all you do. God bless you. And thank you for all of you coming out on a beautiful Friday morning to come out to talk about issues that you care about. And thank you for caring so much about our country and caring about the city, or you wouldn't be here today if that wasn't part of it, and I appreciate that. I look forward to answering questions, but not just answering questions. I really look forward to having an opportunity just to hear what's on your mind, kind of what's happening and things that you think we should be dealing with in Washington, D.C. You know, I work in Washington, D.C., but I was talking to someone earlier. I'm back every weekend. I'm usually the first plane or the last plane into Washington and the first plane out. So I leave on Mondays. We start voting at 5:30, and then usually by Thursday we're done. And I'm usually on an evening flight back and home every weekend here in the Detroit area. Then I have to travel around the state, though. It's not like I'm usually not necessarily home, but I am in Michigan, my home of Michigan. But of course, I'm blessed to represent the whole state of Michigan, so I have to travel all across the state as I do that as well. A few opening comments, and I'm really, really happy to see the folks from the SEIU here today. And I don't know how many of you know this, but it's really personal for me to see the SEIU, and let me tell you that personal story. So. I grew up in a regular household. My dad was a public teacher for many years, and my mother was a nurse's aide in a nursing home. And I know you work with a lot of nurses' aides. In fact, she was a nurse's aide, and as typical being a nurse's aide in a nursing home, you're usually overworked and underpaid. And underappreciated even more, so you're just unappreciated. And so my mother was in this nursing home working. The conditions were not really good, which is typical for, especially when it came to workers. And so she said, maybe we should, in fact, people said to her, Madeline, my mom's named Madeline, Madeline, if you don't like it there, if the management is bad and you're underpaid, why don't you just leave? And she said, well, but I care about my patients. These are people who I've really gotten to know and developed relations with. I shouldn't have to leave here. We should just be treated the way we should be treated. I'm going to work, and we're going to bring a union into this nursing home. That's what we need to do to stand up for us. So she got involved with a group of her co-workers, reached out to the SEIU, and started the organizing drive. And I know all of you know about organizing drives. They are not pleasant things to go through. She had the experience of the management trying to divide people, and they would come to my mom and they'd say, we'll give you a raise if you aren't as involved. We'll take care of you. Try to stop this. And she's like, no, I'm not going to do that. We're in this thing together. But it was hard. I was about 12 at the time, and she had I remember some crying nights and stress. It was not a pleasant thing. You all know about that. But I'm happy to say they were successful. They voted in the union, and then she became a union steward with the SEIU here locally. So my mom, I am so proud of her. She stood up for that and brought in that meeting. And she said, you can't take anything for granted. You got to fight for what's right. You got to fight. No one's going to give you anything. You got to fight for it. And that's what the SEIU does. And so that's why I say it's personal to have all of you here. So keep up the struggle. Keep up the fight. And I'm with you all the way. So I'll mention a few things that I'm working on in Washington, and I want to get to your questions, so I'll be real brief. And maybe that'll kind of tie into some of the questions that may come. Some of the committees that I serve on, I'm right now, and I'm only in my first term. I've been a little over 4 years in the U.S. Senate. I'm the ranking member, means I'm the top Democrat on the Committee for Homeland Security and Government Affairs, which oversees the Department of Homeland Security, which of course is incredibly important to us to keep us safe in our country. And I deal with a variety of issues related to that. I look forward to your questions. I also am on the Armed Services Committee, which oversees the United States military, all aspects of it. I'm a ranking member on a subcommittee there, which is emerging threats and capabilities. And the things that we do there, we oversee all of the military special operations forces. So when you think about the Navy SEALs and the Green Berets, Delta Forces are in my committee, as well as all of the advanced research that the Department of Defense does. Really important for us in Michigan, in Warren, and other places we have the advanced research for the Department of the Army, which is a very important aspect for our economy here. And then I'm on the Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee, which oversees all of the economy with the exception of banking and energy. But my work there is primarily with manufacturing and making things and the auto industry, which of course is incredibly important to us here in Michigan to make sure that we continue to make things. I'm one of those folks, and I think all of us in Michigan is in our blood. We know that in order to be a great country, you actually have to make stuff and manufacture stuff, and these are good paying jobs, and we've got to make sure manufacturing stays healthy and we can expand it. And I look forward to talking about some of my ideas along those lines. So maybe we should just get to questions. Otherwise, I'll be given a Senate filibuster. No one wants to hear a Senate filibuster. I really want to hear what's on your mind.
So the way that we're doing questions, I think when you all came in, there were comment cards that were out there. So my team has gathered those. And let me take a second and give a complete shout out to my team that's in the building, as well as Senator Peters' team, because it is not the two of us that made this thing work. It is them. And so I appreciate both of our teams for making this happen. So you guys keep giving them a round of applause because they are awesome.
How you doing, everybody? My name is Jordan Walker. I work with Councilmember Ayers. So we've been receiving the comment cards. So I'm going to kind of call up the individuals who had a question, and then you can further expound upon your question to the Councilmember and Senator Peters. So we're going to start with question number 1, which is for Senator Peters. And question is from Barry Burke. So Barry Burke, if you are still here, can you please come up to the microphone? And this question is regarding government rate setting.
I've heard about the government rate setting plan to take effect next year as far as reimbursement to hospitals and doctors. And the opposition seems to think that it's going to result in closing hospitals, and I just want that explained to me. How is that going to go, and what can we do?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that question. But before I answer that question, Janee, you remind me I better do my shout out to my staff too. I have my regional director here for Detroit, Corey. Corey's probably in the back there, but Corey's back there. Corey, just come around the corner here so everybody can see you, wherever she is. She's coming this way. There's Corey. So you see Corey. So Corey is in my Detroit office and really coordinates all the outreach in the city of Detroit. So you can see Corey afterwards or during the meeting here if you have an issue that you'd like to talk to her about, please see her. I also have 2 folks around the corner at the desk, which are casework folks. We do all of our casework for the state of Michigan. All gets done in the Detroit office here. And I have 2 caseworkers that we brought out today. They're waving there, but they're in the back desk. So if you have any issues related to the federal government, whether it's the IRS, it's Medicare, it's veterans issues. I mean, all the ways that you can interface with the government. If you have any issues, I heard from a gentleman who had an issue with Canada. If you have an issue with Canada, things that we want to help. So our office, and I take great pride in this, is that we're really your voice in Washington, D.C., dealing with the federal bureaucracy. The federal bureaucracy can be extremely challenging, I know, and you get the runaround, as Janee was talking about, you can get the runaround with the federal bureaucracy. Our job is to be your voice. We'll pick up the phone, we'll write letters, we'll be on it to solve problems for you, and I have a number of folks, that's all they do all day long. They take great pride in it, and it's something that is a focus for us. But I wanted to bring them here today, so you don't have to make the trip to the Detroit office. You can just go see them. So anything that's an issue related to the federal government, see us, and then we'll have our numbers too.
I just want to, this may be the former teacher in me, but do you all, did everybody grasp what Senator Peters is saying? Because oftentimes we have people that will call us and say, well, I tried to get, disability, or I tried to do this and I can't get it, and so I just gave up. He can help you navigate through all of that stuff. And so if you're a veteran and you have an issue, if you have those issues that tie directly to federal government, as far as federal funding, he can help you. So I just want you to understand what we have right here in the building. He brought it to us. And so I think oftentimes we don't recognize what the elected official can do. So like, I can't get you through that. That ain't me. I'm gonna call Gary. But it's here. So if you all have any of those issues while you're here, or you got a family member that has that issue, grab a card from one of his caseworkers so that you can go ahead and further the process. Because I just think sometimes we lose touch with what each branch of government can actually do for us. So just want to reiterate that.
Great. I love the teacher in her. That's really good. Yeah. Put it in words to make sure. So thank you. Thank you, Janee. So the question from Barry, and I think Barry, you're also probably referring to some of the TV ads that you've been seeing out that have been put out right now. So I think I appreciate this as the first question, because you're probably seeing ads about for me to vote no on a bill that's pending before the U.S. Senate. First off, I'll say that the bill is pending. We haven't voted one way or the other. There's a couple bills out there. And what it deals with, what the issue you're seeing on TV deals with, is something that we must deal with, and that is called surprise billing. This is an outrageous thing that is happening in our healthcare system right now, surprise billing. So the way surprise billing works, and it's a surprise, and it's really a bad surprise, is that if you have healthcare coverage and you're in a network for your healthcare plan, and you're in the network, and let me just give you an example, because usually this is where it happens, is like in the emergency room. So you go to the emergency room because you have a crisis, and you go to the hospital, and you go to a place that's in network, it's part of your healthcare plan. They treat you at the emergency room, and then you go home, and then you get a bill in the mail, and oftentimes these bills are pretty big. You get a bill for like $20,000. And you'll say to yourself, what the heck? I thought I'm covered by insurance. Why am I getting a bill for $20,000? This is pretty outrageous. And the reason you're getting the bill is because some units within the hospital, let's say the emergency department, is not in network. They're saying we're not part of the insurance company. We are our own separate entity. We didn't negotiate with the insurance plan as to a reimbursement, and so we're going to bill the patient directly, which is really bad. But it usually gets resolved, but not without a lot of stress on the part of the patient, which is unacceptable. And the insurance company will then negotiate with the providers in that emergency room to get a reimbursement. And so there are now two bills that are coming before the U.S. Senate. The important thing is, and one that I will always do, is to make sure the patient is taken out of it. You should never, ever get a bill like that, bottom line. Never get a bill. We're going to make sure that never happens. So that will not happen. But now where the debate is that the insurance companies are telling folks who are in that plan that we will pay you a rate based on the average of what we pay to our in-network people. The folks on the other side saying, no, we don't want the average of what you pay the network. We want to be able to go to arbitration and negotiate a price. And so it's really, and so the folks who are putting the ads on the air right now are saying they want to be able to negotiate with the insurance company. They don't want the insurance company to give them just an average of what they pay all providers to do that. So it's really a debate about that. They've spent a lot of money on those TV ads, but again, bottom line, regardless of which one is voted on, the bottom line is patients will not get surprise billing. Surprise billing will end. It must end, and you have my commitment that I will never support anything that doesn't get rid of surprise billing completely.
Now we're going to move on to question number 2 from Ed Peasant. If you could come up to the mic, please. And this is also for Senator Peters about repealing rights. Right to work law, I'm sorry.
Good morning. I'm Ed Potasnik. I'm actually in the 11th, but I wanted to, I've been a supporter, and I'm a staunch Democrat, and I hate what's going on right now. It just makes you want to puke with the orange guy in the White House. But I'm also a unionist. I've been vice president and president of Local 22 to Cadillac, local at Trump. This 45 says he's going to maintain the jobs and so forth, auto jobs, and what's happening. They got rid of the transmission plant in Warren, and then they're going after ours. It's scheduled to close, and it's horrible. Being a union man, we're trying to organize, and this guy doesn't want to. He runs the Department of Labor like he does with housing and everything else in the toilet, and he got people in the cabinets that are anti the position that they're in. They're supposed to be representing. It's horrible. You work with them. You know about that. My thing is to help strengthen unions. You want to get rid of right to work. In SEIU, you know about right to work. So I know it's starting to move a little bit, just like Medicare for all, single payer. We need to move behind that too, because then you wouldn't have none of this would happen, and it would take care of a whole lot of stuff. But that's another issue. But my thing is, how are we looking on repealing national right to work? Is there anybody? I think Bernie might have something on that, but can you elaborate on that? Thank you.
Yeah, I will, Ed. Well, Ed, you said it well, and the fact that the labor movement and labor unions are absolutely critical to making sure that people can have access to fair wages. If you work a long day at work, you should be paid fairly for that. You should also have access to benefits. And when you think about it, and I think I mentioned in my opening comments, I'm a staunch believer in labor unions, and it's in my blood, literally, from my mom and my dad, both who are union members. But folks have to remember, too, that when we have strong unions, that's good for everybody, even if you're not in the union, because when unions are able to get better wages and better benefits, that actually helps everybody, because all the other companies have to do the same thing because of what's happening with the labor movement. That's what's critical for us. And if I may just say something about, too, and why we do have to get rid of right to work, I support that as well. Is right now it's the right to work for less is what they're trying to do. And there is no right to work for less. You should have the right to work for fair wages and fair benefits. And what labor unions fight for is what everybody in America should have: a good wage, affordable health care, and when you've worked your whole life, you should be able to retire with dignity and have a pension plan that you can count on. So that is what labor unions are about, and when they're successful, the whole country is successful. And as I continue my talk about labor unions here, the thing that really hit me, it was here in Detroit at the Labor Day Parade, which is coming up here shortly. This was during the healthcare. You brought up healthcare, sir, when we were debating the Affordable Care Act. If you recall, with President Obama leaning in to move that, it was very contentious. We had all these folks, protesting against it during that time when I was just newly elected to the Congress at the time. But the thing that really struck me, and this is why it's so important that we have strong labor unions in America, is that I came down here as I do every year. I'll be down here again this year for the Labor Day Parade with labor as they're marching. And what really struck me, this is in the heat of the Affordable Care Act debate, what really struck me is that everybody in this parade has good quality health care because you negotiated for it, because you collectively bargained for it, because you fought for it, and went to the mat in order to make it happen. I said, everybody here, this is pretty wonderful. Everybody in this parade has good quality health care because of unions. But what struck me as really remarkable is that everybody in that parade also had a sticker on their chest. And on that sticker said, health care for everybody. They were not marching. You were not marching for your own health care. You already had it. You collectively bargained. But you were marching for every American in this country because you said it shouldn't just be you, it should be every American, no matter who they are, no matter where they live, should have access to quality, affordable health care. Health care is a right in this country, and we should never forget that.
I do want to take a second in the midst of our questions just to acknowledge that we do have DPD that is here, and they came of their own volition, and we just appreciate you. So, Captain Cox? Okay. No, I know your last name. I want to get your title right.
Thank you, Councilwoman Ayers, Senator Gary Peters. Just want to let everyone know that I'm here to represent the Detroit Police Department. I'm currently the captain over the Detroit Police Department's 3rd Precinct. I have one of my team members here, Police Officer Dale Dorsey. I'm not sure if he's in the building right now. No? Okay, he's outside. So just want to let you guys know if you've got any concerns regarding the community, regarding crime, anything that you wish to relate to us, I'd be more than happy to talk to you after the meeting. I'll be back here in the back. And thank you, Councilwoman Ayers.
All right. Thank you. Also, let me take a second to just thank each and every one of you for coming. We can host these all day and all night. We can also be in a room talking to nobody but ourselves. And so I really appreciate everybody coming. It's the end of our summer days. I hate to say it, y'all. Y'all know it's coming to an end. But you all could be anywhere else, but you're here with us, and so I appreciate that. And again, whether we all agree or we agree to disagree, that's cool, but we're all here having the conversation, and so I appreciate that. And sorry if you have to stand, I apologize, but we wanted to make sure we have enough space. We asked people to RSVP so we know what to do, and, you know, whatever, it happens. So somebody brought a friend and a friend and a friend, so thank you guys again for being here. Go ahead, Jordan.
All right, we're going to move on to question number 3 from Lori Jennings. This is also for Senator Peters regarding jobs and opportunity in Detroit.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We all know that Detroiters need jobs, and I know we can agree that we have seen improvement in that area, but I'd like to know, what are you doing to improve economic opportunities for Detroiters? I mean, real growth, you know, so that people can take care of a family.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lori. There's nothing's more important than that, is to have everybody have a good paying job, have the opportunity to be paid, as I mentioned, fairly for that. There are a number of things that we need to be doing, but one that I would like to take your question, if I may, and really focus on, which is something I'm very passionate about, and that is that we have to do a whole lot better job and put a whole lot more resources into making sure that people have access to career technical education. To be, not everybody's going off to a 4-year college program. If you want to do that, that's great. But you've got to remember that most folks are not going to do that. And people need to have some skills and training in order to do that. And we do not offer enough opportunity for folks to do that. And so we need to expand the ability to get a trade, through apprenticeship programs, carpentry, plumbing. We have shortages across the board on all of these jobs. As I travel across the state of Michigan, which I do, as I mentioned, every weekend, folks have jobs that are available, but they don't have folks with the right skills who may need to know some basic robotics, some basic computer stuff. And you can get training fairly quickly in a matter of a few months and almost instantly get a job after you do that. So, and if you look at where the federal government is right now, this is what I think is wrong, is that when it comes to 4-year degree programs, the federal government spends close to $200 billion a year helping those programs. And that's fine, that's great. But when it comes to career technical education, to help someone to become a welder, to be working in a manufacturing plant, and to have the skills that employers really need right now, we only spend about $20 billion. It's about a 10-to-1 ratio, even though we have more folks who are not going to college. That is wrong. Whenever we talk about helping folks to go to college, we better be talking about helping every single American get the skills that they need to get a job that pays a middle-class wage or more. So that is going to be critical. Here in Detroit, for example, you've got employers that do want to move into the city. They want to make sure folks have the right skills. It's a problem all over the state. It's not unique to Detroit. It's everywhere to have it. But if we're able to enhance those programs, create more grant programs into the city of Detroit for career technical education, you will see those jobs come into the city, and these are good paying jobs. And it's something I'm working on nationally in order to focus on career tech, which I think has got to be a focus for us.
I just want to chime in too, Ms. Lori, just on the city perspective. So bottom line, what we need to do just in general, person to person, is start getting our folks focused on working and what that looks like. And so a lot of times people talk about soft skills. I don't think they should be called soft skills. They're called imperative life skills. What it means to get to work on time. And to be on time means to be early, not to be there. If it starts at 10, you need to be there at 9:45. So we have to start pushing that. And so those are some of the things that we're doing. I had a conversation with a young lady that is opening up a manufacturing company to assist with the FCA thing. Well, FCA, we all on the same page with FCA, the Crisis Project. So she and I had a conversation, and she knows my passion for returning citizens, but she also understands that when we're talking about giving people first crack and access to the job site that's going to be in their community, then you got to look at really what the demographics of that community are. And so where her particular plant is going, it is going in the heart of District 4, Van Dyke, right in the middle of the hood. Folks smoke weed. Let's just be for real. And so like I told her, I said, well, if you're going to have your plant here, you're going to give them first crack, we need to start looking at how you're doing the drug testing, because maybe, just maybe, we don't do the hair test and we get them in, and then they start working. Then they realize you don't need to smoke weed anymore, because guess what? You have viable employment. And so those are some things that we've been talking about, changing the way people look at hiring and how we look at making people employable, because so many folks have been unemployed for so long. So I think it's about making sure that we start changing what the paradigm looks like too. So I just wanted to chime in on that, because that's what we're doing on the local level to go along with what Gary's doing on the federal level.
Alrighty, question number 4 comes from Deontay Allen. This is for Senator Peters. So Deontay, if you're here, if you could come up to the microphone. And this is regarding air pollution in Southwest Detroit.
Good morning, Mr. Peters. Good morning. I've been living in Southwest Detroit for 7 years, and now as I look into the faces into my own residents in my own neighborhood, and I really feel bad and horrible about the conditions that they're living in due to the pollution that is coming in from Marathon. Not just from Marathon, but also from Dearborn Steel, AK Steel, and U.S. Steel, and other manufacturing and other industrial facilities. Are you in negotiation with the state officials and in Lansing and federal officials in D.C.?
Yes, there is no question what we have in the Southwest in terms of pollution there is incredibly high levels. In fact, I was engaged, this is a few years back now, when we had those big pet coke piles, if you recall all of that in the area too, that was blown into people's houses and into the lakes. We were able to get that moved out. So we do get engaged in that. We're trying to enforce the federal clean air rules that we have right now, getting the EPA more engaged. We've been pushing aggressively. I will tell you, the frustration that I have right now is that you have a Trump administration that basically is trying to thwart the EPA from doing the job that they are supposed to be doing. But we are weighing in as aggressively as we can to deal with it, because it's unconscionable. But quite frankly, I'm gonna get a little political here, if I may say. The EPA works with the president. We've got to change who the president of the United States is.
That's the goal. That's the goal. November 3rd, 2020. Vote Trump out of the White House. Right.
I told y'all we don't do anything stuffy around here. So. But while we're on that though, let's be for real. And moms, I know y'all love your kids, but if you got that son or that daughter that's in your basement that ain't doing nothing, get them up and out and tell them they can't stay if they don't go get registered and go vote. Take them with you, take that nephew, take whoever that is. Because it is so imperative. So the voting aspect is there, but also I want you guys to be very cognizant of, we have a census that is about to come up. And I'm sure Senator Peters can speak to the importance of it more than I can, but when we start talking about whether or not you have EBT cards, or whether or not there are grants so that we can keep our fire department running, or whether or not we have 1 or 2 senators, we gotta get counted. We have to get counted. And I know so many people are like, oh, Trump is going to use it. No, the census records from 70 years ago are just now being opened. So once you get counted, those records are sealed for 70 years. We gotta get counted, y'all. And if we don't, we are going to be in a world of trouble. So we will end up limiting our own representation because we're not getting out to be counted. It's 10 questions. We can do that. We waste more time doing a whole lot of other mess. So.
Right, if I may pick up on that, because I really appreciate you bringing up the census, how important that is. It's actually, the census is in my jurisdiction, one of the committees. The Homeland Security Committee I'm the ranking member of is Government Affairs, so we oversee the census. And I'm really worried that we're not going to have the census as aggressive as they should be to count everybody. I mean, let's be real right here. The Trump administration wants to count some people and not count others. And I think you know what I'm talking about. So we've got to make sure that we're out there counting. And right now, the census, the way the Bureau's doing it, they're going to rely a lot on online. But first, you got to go into your computer or go on the internet and do that. And you know, that's okay, but you got to also remember there are a lot of people that don't have access to that, and folks that aren't going to have access, and that means we got to get out physically and do it the good old-fashioned way, and knock on doors, talk to people, talk to our neighbors, and talk to our friends, and we're going to have to be very engaged. I know the city is very engaged in this. I'm going to be working closely with the Census Bureau to make it happen. I had the director come into the city of Detroit here recently. But I want to put it in other terms, too. You talked about the air pollution issue, sir, and the other issues of economic development. When you're counted, that's how you get federal money. Federal money comes into an area based on the people that live there. It's representation, as Janee mentions. But to put it in dollar terms, it's roughly $1,800 a year of federal money that comes in for every person. And this helps you with the roads and with health care, with parks, you know, all of the kinds of things. So, and the census is done every 10 years. So that means for 10 years, $1,800, that's $18,000. So that's what it means. For every person that gets counted, that brings $18,000 into your community. If that person does not get counted, you just lost $18,000. That's a lot of money. And you multiply that by a lot of folks, you're not going to get what you deserve. So we can't let that happen. I'm fully engaged in this. I know the city of Detroit is. I know the councilwoman's engaged. But we can't do it without all of you. We're going to need everybody involved. There's also jobs available. You talked about jobs in the city of Detroit. The Census Bureau is hiring people now. Talk to my office. We can get you connected with the Census Bureau. They're hiring folks to go out and to work. They also want to work closely with churches and other kind of centers of the community, so let us know how we can work with your place of worship, other organizations that you're a part of, but this is absolutely critical that we do it, and it really kicks off in just a few months, so we need your help. Thank you.
Question number 5 is to both of you guys, actually, and this is from Paulette Evelyn Compass. Are you here? And this question is regarding holding corporations and developers who get taxpayer money to provide union jobs.
Morning. As an elected official for both of you guys, how would you hold corporations and developers who receive our taxpayer money and claim they want to make our city better accountable for providing good union jobs for us hardworking people?
I can go first. So some of you all may not know, but I come from a union background. I was the shop steward. I was that person. And I only became the shop steward because I was in there with some crazy nails and I was doing my own thing. I was in my 20s and I'm like, what? I'm not going to get my nails redone. No, I can still do my job. So that is in me. I've stood with you all and I will always stand with you because I understand what that means. And so, you know, I'm committed to having those conversations, but you all also understand that we can't tell anybody you must be union. But what I can tell them is you don't have my support if you don't want to actually support what it means to have a good, viable job. Because there's one thing, we can have a job, right? You can get a job and it can pay you $9, $10 an hour, but that doesn't even contribute back to our community. We've got to have people having career paths. We need to have people having viable employment where they are making money so that they feel like they're a part of our society. If you live next door to me and you're making union pay, means that you're probably getting your grass cut, you're probably able to keep up on some things and contribute to the community. So that's a no-brainer for me. I'm in it to win it. Y'all know it. I've been arrested before for protesting, so that's an easy one. I'm here. That's me. And anybody that don't like it, that's all right. You don't have to like it. You get some taste, but you know.
I think this question is so important because we have to hold folks accountable. At the federal level, you know, this is federal policy, so it impacts the entire country as we're looking at tax breaks that folks have. First off, let me just say, we unfortunately, I shouldn't say we, I voted against this, but we saw the Trump administration and Republicans pass this huge tax break, primarily for folks at the very top and large corporations. It's going to end up costing estimates anywhere from $1.5 to $2 trillion. That's with a T, $2 trillion in revenue to the government in this huge giveaway to the wealthiest of the wealthy and large corporations. And what these companies have done with that tax break, you know, they said, or the Trump administration said, well, they're going to create more jobs, they're going to put people back to work. Well, guess what? That didn't happen. That didn't happen. And I'll tell you, actually, the CEOs that I had before my committee, because I asked that question, they actually said, no, if we get this tax break, we're going to do share buybacks, which goes to wealthy folks, and increase stock dividends. They were pretty clear. And yet we saw from the Republicans this huge tax cut for these folks. And guess who's going to pay for all of that? Everybody in this room. We're paying for that. That's not holding companies accountable. That's giving away the store, is what we saw. Now, I've introduced legislation that will also deal with another problem that is a significant problem, and those are good-paying jobs from the United States that get shipped overseas. We continue to see this outsourcing of our jobs overseas. So we got to stop that, and I've got a bill that at least will address the issue to shine light on it, and then we can actually hold companies accountable. So what I've introduced is legislation that says when you report to the SEC, the federal government, how many employees you have in your company, and they do that. They have to do that as part of their public company. They say how many employees work for the company. I have an extra question I want to ask. How many of those employees work in the United States of America? Pretty simple question. Because I want to know if you're getting tax breaks, are you using those tax breaks to ship jobs to China or to Guatemala or some other place? Because if you're using tax cuts to hire people in foreign countries, you're not going to get those tax cuts. We're going to cut those off. This is about hiring Americans to do work in the United States of America. And you know, when I asked for this information, the company said, oh, this is such a burden. You know, how are we going to tell you what country the workers are in? I said, come on. Really? You don't know where you're sending the paycheck every pay period? You don't know it's being sent to China or Guatemala? That is ridiculous. So we've got to call them out, make sure that they understand that we are watching, not only from tax benefits, but as consumers too. I think we would all rather buy products from American companies with American workers who are getting paid fair wages than shipping that money overseas. So we're going to be on this and aggressive to make sure American workers always are the prominent ones.
Alrighty, so we're gonna move on to question number 6. This is the Councilmember Ayers from Nadine Jasper. If you could come to the mic. And this is regarding healthcare, rent increases, and homelessness.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Concerned about the health care. I'm retired, and with the co-pays, that's the issue. You've already addressed that. Also, what I'm concerned about is I live in a downtown area. A lot of the apartment buildings have been bought. So a lot of the seniors and people who have been downtown for a long time have been priced out or are being priced out. And then, I forgot what else I wanted.
The homelessness. But I got it. I got it. I got it right here.
I had so many things, so I'm sorry. But my concern is when I come home, I come off the freeway, Lafayette, you have trash under the viaduct. And the concern is if the trash roll down and come on the freeway, then that's a possible accident. Also, the homeless on the corners, you have trash and it looks bad. And then living in that area, Chrysler, Lafayette, a lot of the homeless cut through our parking lot. So you have a concern there because they go through the garbage bins and then you have to make sure that the doors are locked, because sometimes we have found in different buildings where I live, people were downstairs in the basement. So that's a concern. So, you know, what are we going to do about that?
Right.
Okay, so let's kind of dissect that a little bit. So as far as the rent, we all have seen that happening, right? We've got a lot of people that are coming in and buying a property. As a government, we can't tell them, you can't make your rent a certain price. So we don't have the right to do that. But if they're coming to us and they need something from us, that's when we can start the negotiation process. So I'll leave it like that so that I don't say too much. But I think y'all can read through that, right? Okay. All right. As far as the homelessness piece, so people have the right to be on the corner, but what they don't have the right to do is make a mess. And so we've been working with DPW, which is Department of Public Works, to try to make sure that we speed up our collection and cleanup. Because it's not just a problem for you. I got my folks in District 2. If you're over there by the Myers at Woodward and 8 Mile, that's a whole thing up under there. And so, you know, what we've done as a city, though, we've started looking at what can we do legislatively. So there is the affordable housing ordinance that's out there so we can give people a pathway. I passed recently the fair chance ordinance, which a lot of folks that you see on the street, some of them are mentally deficient, and then some we have that are returning citizens. And when I say returning citizens, I'm talking about folks that have been incarcerated before, and they don't have opportunity to live in places. And so the fair chance ordinance that I passed does allow for them to do just that, have a fair chance at housing. So they will be able to go in, they have to be deemed qualified and all of that. So you're not looking at their background first, you're looking at what am I bringing to the table today. So we're trying to make sure that we get rid of some of those barriers so we can move some of those folks into some place to actually live. Now the other part, I think, what else did you say through there? I didn't know about you all having people in the basements of your buildings. So if somebody, Jordan or somebody else from the team, I want to get your information so that we can start making that aware to the neighborhood police officers and whomever else, because that's a problem. You shouldn't be living somewhere, paying what you're paying to live there, and then someone being in the basement of your building. That is not a concern that I've ever heard, so I'm glad you brought that to our attention. So we can definitely work on that part. Thank you.
Question number 7 comes from Chalice White. Please forgive me if I said that incorrectly. Chalice White? Charles Wright, I'm sorry. And this is regarding SEIU and fighting for unions. This is for Councilmember Ayers.
Okay.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And I'll say good morning to Council Ayers and also to Senator Peters. I have this question for Senator Peters. My name is Charles White, and I work for Secure America, which is a contractor hired by Dan Gilbert to provide security services for his bedrock buildings. We know that our bosses will never agree to us forming a union without the official okay from Bedrock. But Bedrock refuses to engage or even meet with us to hear our story. What will you do to help us get a meeting with Bedrock?
To hear start, well, I will make a call and try to get that meeting. I'm happy to help you get that meeting. Yeah.
Alrighty, question number 8 comes from Fanny Person. This is for Senator Peters regarding the cost of copay on medication. So if you could come to the mic, Ms. Person.
Good morning, Detroit. It's Gary Peters and Janee Ayers. I was wondering, what do you do as seniors that has copay and you're not considered low income? And where do you get help for? Where do you go to get help with your copays?
Copay, what health?
Medication.
Medication, what health care do you have? Medicare?
Yes.
Medicare. Well, talk to the office. We can give me your details as to what you're dealing with. But I'll just say, taking your question, is that we have to lower the cost of prescription drugs in this country. They are outrageously expensive, and you look at it relative to the rest of the world. And oftentimes these medications are actually made here in the United States. They're American companies as well. You know, it's well known if you're a diabetic on insulin, if you just drive across the bridge or take the tunnel to Canada, the cost is 1/10 of what it is here in the United States. I mean, it's absolutely unacceptable to have that. What we are doing right now, and we're going to be pushing this very aggressively as the Democratic caucus in September, when we get back into Senate session, is that as a start, and there's a lot more that we have to do, but this is a big start, is that we have to allow Medicare to be able to negotiate with drug companies to get a lower price for drugs. You know, it makes no sense. If you're, that's the American way. If you're a big company or a big customer, if you're a big customer, you can usually get a better price because you're buying a whole lot of the stuff. You know, it's volume. So I'm buying a lot of it. I should pay a little less per item because I'm giving you a lot of business. Well, I tell you, Medicare is giving the drug companies a whole lot of business. And the fact that they can't negotiate with drug companies and bring down the price of drugs is simply unacceptable. We're going to do everything we can to get it on the floor of the Senate and get a vote. And I dare any Republican senator to vote against that, because this is common sense, and that will help you and so many of our seniors who are overburdened by costs that continue to go up at a rate that makes no sense and higher than inflation rate. You have my commitment. I'm going to keep fighting for that.
So the next question, question number 9, is for Councilmember Ayers. Ms. Winnie Crockett.
Mm-hmm.
If you could come to the mic, and this is regarding Airbnb.
I knew that was coming.
Yes. Good morning, Councilperson, and to my favorite Senator, Gary Peters, and to the other people that are here. I am here representing this community. I'm president of 15th Street Block Club, and this is our community right here. So welcome to our house.
All right, well, thank you for having us.
We had, and probably will have again, and I don't know if you're aware, it sounds like you are, there's an Airbnb that was set up. It's been there for a couple of years, and everything has been Airbnb-ish until last month or a couple months, maybe June. All of a sudden, there's a wow party that lasts from Friday till Monday. There's prostitution, there's drugs. We are we're close-knit with
Captain Cox, are you
Captain Cox and Officer Dorsey, and we've had them out, and then we've also talked with our District 5 person. Now, I've been talking with other communities, and I know Palmer Park has had that issue, but is there some rules and regulations to these Airbnbs?
All right, I've been waiting for this because I knew it was coming.
Let me answer this just all the way around, because I know there's probably some folks in here that are from a couple groups that are anti-me right now. That's cool. Welcome. Have some water. So I am working on legislation right now. When we come back from recess, we'll start talking about it even more, that addresses short-term rentals. So I want us all to get in the habit of saying short-term rental, because it is not directed at just Airbnb, okay? So my ordinance is, oh, okay. All right, thank you, Rick. So right now, there are no rules to any of the short-term rentals. Nothing. There's nothing that's out there. We have a moratorium on even issuing fines because there are no rules that go around it. So the reason that I even picked this up as something to do was because I've heard these complaints. And my belief is that, yes, you can own your property and you can do what you want with your property, but we also have to respect the other folks that live near you. Because, no offense to anybody, but I think when most of us purchased our homes, we purchased them to not be next door to a Dewdrop Inn. Just my thought. And then there's another aspect of it that we need to be very cognizant of, especially for the city of Detroit. There's the affordable housing piece that is in there. Because I sit as the vice chair of public health and safety. And so the subcommittee of that is dangerous buildings. So we have people that come in, because we're different, Detroit. We've got a housing stock that's out of this world. Folks are coming in and they're purchasing property, and then they're renovating it to whatever standard they're renovating it to. And then they are not renting it out or selling it. They're using it as short-term rentals. And so I had a friend, we grew up together, and she's like, they're talking about your ordinance in the Nextdoor app. And I said, okay. And so what do you think about it? And she says, well, I appreciate Airbnb, and I've used it. I'm staying in Airbnb now while I found an apartment I can afford. I say, hold on. I need you to sit in what you just said. You are in an Airbnb while you find an apartment you can afford. You can't afford the apartment because they're using it as a short-term rental. That's the problem. And so finding that delicate balance between saying, yes, this is your property, yes, you can do what you need to do, but also recognizing and understanding the importance of your neighbors. And so what my ordinance is looking to do is say, you need to live in this property. You need to live in the property. You can rent it out X amount of days. It'll be 1,000 feet from the next one. So it's not, and I want to just clear this up, because it's a lot of little groups starting on Facebook and all this trash, talking about, oh, she just wants to get rid of Airbnb, and oh, now that black people are in it, she wants to make them stop making one. I ain't even thinking about it that deep, yo. I'm not. The bottom line is this. People deserve to be able to live in a safe space. You need to be able to not have to live next door to a party every night if you don't want to. And it's just that simple. It's about common courtesy and respect. I'm not trying to get rid of it. They can still exist. But you have a different kind of concern if it's your house and it's neighbors that you know next door, and the next time you pull up, Miss Johnson's giving you the side eye, you're gonna feel a little different if you live there. And so I'm taking those strides, and so if you are in support, when we come back in September, the fight is gonna get real. I already know it, because I know how they operate. And I've been to San Francisco, I've been to Boston, I've been to New York. We have come up with an ordinance that I believe is palatable on both sides, and we've done it with looking at how other cities have done it, because this is not new. So we're talking about an organization, a platform that doesn't want any regulations at all. And so if you are understanding and want more understanding, my staff will be happy to give you a walkthrough of the ordinance. But bottom line is, I'm looking at maintaining affordable housing for people that live here, maintaining public health and public safety on our streets and our communities. That's it. So I'm not trying to stop anything. I'm not trying to do that. Wait, hold on, Jordan. I'm sorry, y'all. I got to give you one more example because this is it was mind-boggling. We had a guy call the office and he said, well, I just want to know if your ordinance is going to affect me. And I said, well, what are you trying to do? And he says, I'm going to buy an apartment building in District 7. So we're talking about Northwest Detroit. And I said, okay. And he says, yeah, because I want to make it short-term rental. I said, well, sir, my ordinance is basically saying, dear you, here you go. That's the type of thing that we can't have. You're going to buy a whole apartment building? Why not just rent it out? Like, let people live there, not just short-term. So that's that. Sorry, y'all. I had to get on my platform for a second.
All right, this next question, 10 and 11, we're going to kind of bunch together. This is for Councilmember Ayers and Senator Peters. Regarding, this is from Irma Leapart, I'm sorry. Regarding federal funding for drinking water, Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, composting, and the green ordinance.
Okay.
Good afternoon. So first I want to say thank you to Senator Peters. You have been a tremendous support of all things Great Lakes and truly appreciate that. You know how much it's needed. Detroit is one of the largest cities in the Great Lakes Basin. We've got this freshwater resource that is extremely important. It is probably our most important natural resource. So protecting it and restoring it to a healthy state is critical. But part of that includes funding for infrastructure. So drinking water, stormwater, and wastewater infrastructure, including green infrastructure. And in the 70s, the federal government was funding infrastructure at 60%. It's now funding it at 9%. And so what's happening is ratepayers have to pay for water main improvements and sewer improvements and stormwater. That's untenable. We cannot continue to put that cost onto ratepayers. So it's really critical, and we look for your support in trying to fund those infrastructure projects with federal dollars. And likewise in the city, you know, there have been efforts, the post-construction stormwater ordinance, which I believe Councilman Ayers, you supported, as well as the greenhouse gas ordinance. We also need citywide composting to manage our food waste because, you know, it's going to the landfill and ultimately that leaches into our groundwater, you know, so all of these are water issues and there are things we can do. We also want a Green Streets ordinance. It's not yet before the City Council. The Green Task Force is working on that. But we've got road projects like the Grand River Road Project with MDOT that really refused to do anything to manage stormwater. And so if we have both public and private partnerships in managing stormwater, then that's key to keeping that cost from us, the ratepayers. So we look for your support on that. So thank you both. And I have literature I'll give to your staff.
Yeah, great. Thank you for those comments, and you're right about the Great Lakes. There's no question. Next to our people, that's the number one resource, number one natural resource, certainly for our state. And we understand from the recreational standpoint how important it is. But the thing that I constantly remind my colleagues in Washington, too, is that 40 million people drink water out of the Great Lakes. That's an incredible source of drinking water. So we better keep it clean. We better keep it vibrant for us, for our future generations. I know in the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, for example, which I've been a big sponsor of. In fact, Senator Stabenow and I are now on a bill to make that more permanent for the years ahead and to increase the amount. Right now it's $300 million to go up to over $400 million per year to do that. In fact, it's quite timely you bring this up here today. I was just out at Belle Isle yesterday with the senator and other folks with the lake renovation that's going on in Belle Isle. Belle Isle has received several $1 million from the Great Lakes Restoration Fund to enhance the environment there, but also to enhance the marshes and which is nature's way of healing and cleaning and, you know, let nature. She does a better job than all of us are. As wonderful as our engineers are, Mother Nature and God has it on us all. So how do we make sure that that's working properly? And that's an example of that funding. Again, I hate to keep bringing this back to politics, but you know, the Trump administration has tried to zero that out, or 90% cut every year. We've been able to put it back in. We see the results at Belle Isle. We see it in other places all across the state. and we're going to keep making sure that that funding is going in for restoration funding. You also mentioned infrastructure, which is the huge issue. As a caucus, as the Democratic caucus, we have put forward a comprehensive infrastructure plan. We would hope the United States Senate would take it up. We have to invest. Instead of these giveaways that I talked about earlier, these giveaways to big corporations and to the wealthiest of the wealthiest, instead we should have taken that money and invested in infrastructure. And when we talk about infrastructure, obviously that's roads and bridges, but you can't forget the underground infrastructure of sewers and water. We are all very familiar with the crisis in Flint and what happened there, and horrific. We were able to get, through a lot of work, money to rebuild a lot of that system because of that crisis. But we can't wait for a crisis to occur to get money to help folks like the City of Flint. The City of Flint is just an example of what will happen all across this country if we do not invest in this infrastructure right now. So we will be pushing that as well aggressively. We need to make some changes in Washington to make it happen. But know that that's a commitment, and to not invest in our country. Once, as I talked about, manufacturing is critical for us to be a strong, vibrant country. You got to have world-class infrastructure. If you don't have world-class infrastructure that you build on, you're not going to be a great country. We've got to step up, make that commitment, and I'm with you 100%.
So we're going to move on to question number 12. This comes from a Mr. McGee. This is for Senator Peters. And this is regarding making health care accessible and affordable for everyone, including those under 65.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and thank you, Councilwoman, and thank you, Senator Peters. My name is Reg McGee. I'm here representing Lafayette Park Indivisible, longtime resident of Detroit, third-generation Detroiter. And my question is concerning health care, big issue, and something that needs to be changed dramatically so we can all have not only just access, because you can go to the door, but you may not be able to afford it. Mm-hmm. So the question is, there are a lot of people who are seniors, as the woman just spoke, who can't afford to pay for some of the copays. I have personal friends who can't afford to pay for the prescriptions, emergency room activity that, Medicare doesn't pay for. There are a lot of working people, young working people who have one job or two jobs and still can't afford to pay for their health care. They have access, but they can't afford to pay. There are a lot of middle-aged people who are not yet 62 and a half or 65 who can't get Medicare, and they're caught because they still don't have enough to get to the point where they can do it. And even if you were to lower the Medicare buy-in age, like Senator Stabenow proposes, you still got to pay. It's just lowering it, but you still got to pay. So my question is, there's a lot of things out there now in the Democratic debate, health care for all, Medicare for all, single payer. I'm asking you, where do you stand on that? Because we need to not have accessible health care. We need health care that people can afford. And the other thing I want to close on is this, third-generation Detroiter. Your family were union people. My family were union people. A lot of people in this room fought for and brought unions in, and they were thought to be too radical. Okay, that's too radical. And a lot of people in here, my grandparents, my parents, me, a lot of people in this room fought for civil rights. And a lot of people, that's too radical. We can't do that. And a lot of people in here, your people, your parents, your family, my parents, my family fought for women's rights. Oh, that's too radical. That's too radical. Don't be afraid to be too radical. That's right. Don't be afraid to challenge the insurance companies and the prescription drug companies. And if people say, oh, Senator Peters is too radical, you're not too radical. You're not too radical. They're too afraid or they're bought off. Don't be too radical.
Yeah, right. I love it. No, I love it. And I hope when I was talking about earlier, so it's about affordable health care. It's not just access. You're absolutely right. There's no question about it. And when you talk about being radical, I just give you a little bit of thought is I supported and was proud to support with President Obama the Affordable Care Act, which I thought was absolutely critical that we get that passed. And I will just tell you of how important that is and how we have to keep fighting to keep that in place and then move on. It was never meant to be the end. It was meant to be an important first step to make sure everybody has access to quality, affordable health care. So as a new congressman, I've been in the Senate 4 years, or 4.5 now, but when I first got into the House, I represented a district up in Oakland County, and as a member of Congress. When I got elected in 2008 up there, I was the first Democrat elected since 1893. So they hadn't had many Democrats up there where I got elected. And I got elected, and then we were in the Affordable Care Act debate. And if you recall back then, the town hall meetings, it was a lot different than this town hall. Remember, people would be hollering and screaming and saying, you can't support President Obama and this Obamacare, this is going to be the end of the country, and all of that. I had a town hall meeting in West Bloomfield, which I represented, at the West Bloomfield High School. There were 1,200 people in the auditorium for my town hall. They were all yelling and screaming at me and mad at me. I had another 1,200 outside that were even angrier because they couldn't come inside to yell and scream and holler at me to say you can't support the Affordable Care Act. I had people saying, you know, Gary, you just won this district. It's really a Republican district. You're the first Democrat for a long time. If you vote for the Affordable Care Act, you won't get reelected. And these are folks that are pretty knowledgeable about stuff. I said, well, you know what? I'm gonna read the Affordable Care Act. That's a radical concept, right? Read the bill. Read the bill. The more I read it, the more I said, this is really good. Now, it's not perfect. I don't think anything is perfect. It's certainly not in Congress. But it moves us into the right direction of where we want to go, that people are going to be able to have access to health care. And in this case, to expand it, because at that time, we recall there were thousands of people who died in this country because they don't have access to health care and didn't have health care insurance. Thousands of people died. And so I said, you know, this probably means that I'm going to vote for it. This probably means I'm not going to get reelected. But why am I in Congress if I don't do this? And I will remember vividly. I remember it vividly. I was sitting next to a couple of my colleagues on the House floor where the vote is coming up to vote for the Affordable Care Act. You got to push the little green button. And I said, well, I'm going to get up and push this button, and this means I'm not coming back to Congress. But I will just say, when can you have the ability to push a green button and literally save thousands of people's lives? So that's what I did. I pushed it. I was proud of it. And you know, guess what? I got reelected. So you can do that. And it's about having that, if you can stand behind what you believe, you do it. And you know what? The Affordable Care Act has gotten more popular. Folks now know that they have access to it. Now we're fighting. The big battle that I'm fighting right now that I think I have to be focused on is we got to protect what we have in the Affordable Care Act. Because the Trump administration basically wants to undermine everything that President Obama did in that very important piece of legislation. And we got to protect that. We got to keep moving it forward. I do believe you got to make sure people can be able to buy into it, have access. And the one thing that I think right now is the immediate step that I think is really important. You mentioned Senator Savanaugh's legislation, which I'm on to back it to 50. But what we really need in the Affordable Care Act, and it's designed so everybody can buy in, and you know, based on your income, you pay a percentage of that income, so it's affordable. You still have to pay in, but it's affordable based on your income. But what we don't have in the Affordable Care Act, in the exchange, is what's called a public option. We should have done that back then. And so I support legislation by Tim Kaine, Michael Bennett, that says when you are in the Affordable Care Act, you should be able to buy Medicare. If you want to have Medicare in the Affordable Care Act, that should be your option. I think that'll bring prices down. You're going to see Medicare, which is going to be great competition for the private insurance companies if you have Medicare in there. And so people will be able to buy. This is at any age. If you're in the Affordable Care Act, you know, you can get Medicaid. If you're in the Affordable Care Act, if you're in Medicare, but any age can buy in through the Affordable Care Act. It's all based on your income as to how much you pay. If you make less money, you pay a lot less for a premium. It's tied to that. But Medicare will be an option. And my goal is, I think, what you do is you show to the American people that Medicare really works. We know seniors know it really works. Let's show Medicare really works for all ages and do it in a way by using the Affordable Care Act. That way we can do it right away. You can put Medicare as an option in the Affordable Care Act by passing that bill. And I think that's an important first step.
We only have time for one last question, but I just would like to reiterate that if you did not get a chance to hear your question heard publicly. Our office, Councilmember Ayers' office, will be reaching out to you directly to address your concerns. So please expect a call from us. But the last question is question number 13 is coming from Tracy Smith. If you could come to the mic. And this is regarding budget in regards to mental health and animal control funding.
Good morning. So I have two brief questions. The first question is in regards to reinstating funding for animal control with the recent death of the 9-year-old within the city, as well as a traumatic experience that I had as a child. What can we do to reinstate that? And for Mr. Peters, in regards to mental health funding, we definitely need more mental health professionals in the school and the community to be more proactive in regards to issues that are taking place in the news as opposed to being reactive. So what can we do to increase that type of funding?
I'll just go, there's no question there is a shortage of funding for mental health services. And the thing we got to remind everybody, mental health is every bit as important, sometimes more important than physical health as well. You've got to put it on equal lines. We have been fighting aggressively to try to get more money for funding for mental health programs. I've been working on legislation to expand that funding into our health clinics as well as into our schools. I just requested a report from the General Accounting Office to get a sense of how we have the numbers of underserved Americans in this country, which is important to put a number on it. As you already know, it's a huge number, but we're going to get the official document from it. I think you're going to see in Michigan, of the 10 million people that live here, probably over 3 million live in underserved areas, whether it's in urban areas or in rural areas. But you're going to see 4.5 million. Literally half the population of the state of Michigan is underserved when it comes to mental health services. That's simply unacceptable. It's unconscionable that that's the case. And so we will continue to work to increase federal funding to leverage what the state is able to do in that area. And I think as we get these numbers forward, we're going to be able to build an even stronger case and make the kinds of investments we need. We got to get it through the Senate. The Senate's not an easy place to pass that kind of stuff right now, which I'm going to give another plug. It's important we change the Senate. We got to have a new majority in the Senate so that we can move that going forward. But that will be what we'll continue to work on.
Okay, and so as far as the animal control piece, so many of you may or may not know, I do serve as the chair of Budget, Finance, and Audit for the city. And maybe it's a surprise, I'm a no-nonsense person. I'm kind of straightforward. And we have our budget hearings, so it's not that they don't have funding. As a matter of fact, I pushed for them to get more funding so that we can hire more animal control officers as well as extend the hours. And we added a different classification, so there are actually 2 sets of animal control officers. So that's not even the issue. So they have money. The problem is we need the administration. So let me make sure I'm making that real clear. Legislative controls the purse, so I put the money there. I need the administration to make sure that they're delegating the funds to go where we want them to be. And so that's part of the issue, you guys. And I think oftentimes we don't know. We don't know. We're going through our daily life trying to figure out your own budget or your own house. So we don't really think about how the government works in this. So the money is there. The hours have been extended. We need some folks. So if y'all know people that are looking for jobs, tell them to please come apply. We need some bodies. So if we have the positions are open and nobody's there to fill it, I can provide space for 20 more officers, but if I don't have anybody applying, then I have to work with what we have. And so I think it's tremendously important that we get that message out there, but I do want you to know, and everyone else in the room, that the money is available. It's there. We just need some more folks to come and want to do the job. And then I know we said we had a lack of time, but Ms. Leverett, where's Ms. So your houses, that is part of my committee. So what we can do is get the addresses, and I can tell you where they are in the timeline. But it's the list, y'all. So let me just be very transparent with you. When you all call or you tell us, oh, I got this house that's abandoned next door, oftentimes they're on the list. It's just that the money hasn't come through to get rid of the house yet. So there are a lot of them that are there, but some can be expedited because they are a direct threat. So they're about to fall over or cave in, so we can do that. I think the last thing I wanted to tell you all is just something else that I'm working on. I guess this is my year of controversy, right? So I'm picking on Airbnb or whatever, short-term rental. Formula businesses, that is one that I think is extremely important. Does anybody know what formula businesses are? No. All right, good. So it is, how many of you have driven down the street and you see Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, Dollar Mart, Dollar General, Baba, whatever, and then you don't see a Kroger or a Meijer or anything, right? What we're seeing is that there is a proliferation in our communities of these discount type of stores. Why? Why is it that we believe that that's what our communities should have? And no shade to them, because I run up in Family Dollar, I do it. But it doesn't mean that the neighborhood should just be completely concentrated with those type of businesses. Because if I'm Kroger, I'm not gonna come, why would I come in and you've got all the discount stores here? I have no reason to be here because you're not gonna spend your money with me. But that also limits our access to fresh produce, to fresh meat, to all of those things, right? And so, like I told y'all, I guess this is my year to just shake up some stuff. I'm going to be looking at how do we address that. And so, again, there's probably 15 more Facebook groups that don't like me, and that's fine. Everybody can't have the same taste. It's okay. But we're going to look at that, because when you have those discount stores that are selling you produce, and then some of them now are selling beer and wine, I heard, you know, what are we doing? We are allowing for our communities to look like what somebody else wants them to look like, not what we want them to look like. So just telling y'all in advance, that's some of the things I'm working on. And also looking at 24-hour businesses so that we can really look at, do some of these businesses need to be 24 hours? Because I don't know about you, but I drive through some corridors and some things at 24 hours, and I'm like, I ain't seen a car come through here yet. So why are you open? What are you actually doing? What are you actually selling? And how does that affect where I live or where you live or whatever? And so, again, like I said, this is my year to kind of shake up some things. And to Gary's point, maybe you won't get reelected. All right, what I'm going to do what I'm going to do while I'm here, right? So that's that. Jordan, are you giving me some direction? Because I see you staring at me. Corey, are you giving us direction? Oh, okay, so yes, you're giving me direction.
You're closed.
We're closing. Okay.
I would just like to add, if you have a comment card that is filled out and you haven't turned it in, please make sure somebody from our staff gets it, and we will be contacting you to address your issue or concern.
Before I turn it over to our host here, I'll just say thank you, Janee. Thank you again. Thank you for all that you do, and appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. For all of you, thank you. It's really great, and I just want to remind everybody, Corey is already working it, talking to someone there. So Corey is here in Detroit. We have constituent service folks out in the lobby there. Any issues, please use them. And if not today, just let folks know who aren't here today. If you hear somebody tell you, I've got an issue with the federal government and something's going on, whether, the whole list of things that I'm frustrated, say, call Gary Peters. Call his office. He has a whole staff of people who try to make it right and get it done. I take that very seriously. They take it very seriously, and we take great pride in helping people. A lot of what I do in Washington is really intangible, but when we can help somebody in the city of Detroit get a check or get some help, that makes me feel really good, because we can help you, and that's why I'm there. So please use our services. So thank you again for being here.
So I guess what I would say in closing is, hold on, folks. I know we all leaving, but if you're gonna leave, I need you to leave a little bit more quiet. Bottom line, thank you all for being here, because this is how we have real conversation and real issues and information gets passed on when you hear it from the horse's mouth. So I appreciate you being here. And just so you know, one of the reasons that we had to wrap up right now and so quickly is because Senator Peters and I we're headed over to Livernois to start figuring out what we can do to help those folks. And then from there, we're going to spend some money over on Livernois because we got to put our money where our mouth is, and that's just simple as that. So I appreciate you all being here. Again, if you need to contact my office, it's 313-224-4248. And again, if you did not have your question addressed, make sure that the A-team gets it, everyone's in the burgundy outfits, and we will get back to you and make sure that we touch base with you. But again, from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate you all being here. Thank you. 224-4248. Thanks, guys.
I work for Senator Gary Peters in the Detroit office. If you are having issues with the federal agency, our phone number is 313-226-6020. And you are more than welcome to come into our office as well. We are located in the McNamara Federal Building. It is right across the street from the Rosa Park bus station. And we are up on the 18th floor. So if you guys need us, feel free.